She was just filling in as a waitress at a charity gala when a little boy she'd never met ran through the crowd crying, "Mommy." The room went silent. The Mafia boss hosting the event froze because his son hadn't spoken in a year, and the boy was staring at her like she'd come back from the dead. Maya Torres wiped the wine stain from her borrowed white shirt and prayed it wouldn't show under the black vest. She had exactly $43 in her checking account. Rent was due in 5 days, and her daughter Emma's school field trip permission slip sat unsigned on the kitchen counter because she couldn't afford the $15 fee. But tonight, she was going to smile, serve champagne to Boston's wealthiest, and pretend she belonged in the crystal ballroom of the Harrington Hotel. "Table 7 needs refills," barked Susan, the catering manager, shoving a tray of champagne flutes into Maya's hands. "And for God's sake, don't make eye contact. These people don't want to see you. They want to see the drinks." Maya nodded, balancing the tray as she wove through the crowd. The charity gala was in full swing, a sea of designer gowns, $1,000 suits, and jewelry that could pay her rent for a year. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across marble floors, and a string quartet played softly in the corner. She'd never been in a room like this. Not as a guest, anyway. The stage at the far end of the ballroom commanded attention. A banner stretched across the back wall, the Lucia De Luca Foundation, building tomorrow's future. Maya had heard about the foundation during her hurried training session. Something about children's education and healthcare. Noble causes funded by people who'd never worried about choosing between groceries and electricity. She approached table 7 with her professional smile firmly in place. An older woman in diamonds waved her away without looking up. Maya moved to the next table, then the next, her feet already aching in the cheap flats she'd bought at a discount store. Then the lights dimmed. A spotlight illuminated the stage, and the room fell silent. "Ladies and gentlemen," a voice echoed through the speakers, "please welcome our host for the evening, Vittorio De Luca." The applause was polite but genuine. Maya glanced toward the stage as she set down her tray, curious despite herself. The man who walked into the spotlight didn't look like what she'd expected from a charity host. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from stone. His tuxedo fit him like it had been designed specifically for his frame, which it probably had. But it was his eyes that caught Maya's attention. Dark, almost black, and carrying a weight that seemed wrong for a celebration. He looked like a man who'd forgotten how to smile. "Thank you for coming tonight," Vittorio said, his voice smooth but lacking warmth. "My late wife Lucia believed that every child deserved a chance at." A small voice cut through the silence. "Mommy?" Maya's head turned toward the sound. A little boy, no more than 5 years old, stood near the edge of the stage. He wore a miniature tuxedo, his dark hair neatly combed, but his face was crumpled with confusion and something that looked like desperate hope. He was staring directly at Maya. "Mommy." The boy's voice rose, louder now, and he started running, not toward the stage where Vittorio stood frozen, but across the ballroom floor, weaving between tables. Running straight toward her. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. Every head in the room turned. The boy's shoes slapped against the marble, echoing in the sudden, awful silence. "Wait," Maya started, but the child crashed into her legs, small arms wrapping around her waist with desperate strength. "Mommy, you came back," he sobbed into her vest. "You came back." Maya's hands hovered uselessly above the boy's shaking shoulders. She looked up, searching for anyone, to explain what was happening. Instead, she met Vittorio De Luca's eyes across the ballroom. He stood motionless on the stage, the microphone forgotten in his hand. His face had gone pale, but his eyes were locked on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Not anger. Something worse. Recognition. "Security," someone whispered urgently. 2 men in dark suits materialized from the shadows, moving toward Maya with practiced efficiency. The boy's grip tightened, his small fingers clutching the fabric of her vest. "No," he screamed. "Don't take her away again." "Wait." Vittorio's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and commanding. The security guards froze mid-step. He descended from the stage with measured steps, never breaking eye contact with Maya. The crowd parted like water, every guest watching with barely concealed fascination. Up close, Vittorio De Luca was even more imposing. He towered over her, his presence filling the space with an authority that made Maya want to step back. But she couldn't move with the child still clinging to her. "Marco," Vittorio said softly, kneeling beside his son. "Marco, look at me." The boy shook his head, burying his face deeper into Maya's side. Vittorio's jaw tightened. "Son, this isn't." "She came back," Marco whispered. "Like you promised. You said she was watching over me, and now she's here." Maya saw it then, the crack in Vittorio's composure. His hand trembled slightly as he reached toward his son, then pulled back. When he looked up at Maya again, there was something raw in his expression. "He hasn't spoken in a year," Vittorio said quietly, meant only for her. "Not since the funeral." The funeral. His late wife. The Foundation's namesake. Maya's stomach dropped as understanding dawned. "I don't understand," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've never seen him before. I've never." "I know," Vittorio interrupted. His eyes searched her face with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "But he sees her." The ballroom remained frozen in tableau, hundreds of Boston's elite watching a scene they'd gossip about for months. Maya could feel their stares like physical weight. "Please," Vittorio said, and the word sounded like it cost him something. "Come with me. Just for a moment. I need to show you something." Maya looked down at the boy still wrapped around her, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. She thought of Emma at home with Mrs. Chun, probably already asleep. She thought of the $43 in her account and the rent she couldn't pay. She thought of the desperate hope in a 5-year-old's eyes. "Okay," she heard herself say. Vittorio stood, gesturing toward a door behind the stage. The security guards flanked them as they moved, Marco refusing to let go of Maya's hand. The crowd watched them disappear through the door, and then the whispers began, a rising tide of speculation that would flood Boston by morning. Maya didn't know it yet, but her life had just changed forever. And somewhere in the shadows of the ballroom, a man with cold eyes pulled out his phone and made a call that would set everything else in motion. The private room behind the stage was nothing like the opulent ballroom. Simple furniture, muted colors, a space designed for function rather than impression. Vittorio closed the door, muffling the whispers and speculation outside, then turned to face Maya. Marco still hadn't let go of her hand. "I apologize for this," Vittorio said, his voice tight. "I understand how uncomfortable this must be." Maya swallowed hard. "I still don't understand what's happening." "Why would he?" "Let me show you." Vittorio pulled out his phone, his fingers moving across the screen with careful deliberation. He held it toward her. The face staring back from the photograph made Maya's knees weak. The woman could have been her twin. Same dark hair falling in waves past her shoulders. Same warm brown eyes with flecks of gold. Same delicate nose, same full lips, even the same slight dimple in her left cheek. The woman wore a radiant smile and held a baby wrapped in blue blankets. "That's Lucia," Vittorio said quietly. "My wife. Marco's mother. She died 13 months ago." Maya's free hand came up to her mouth. "Oh God. I'm so sorry." "But I don't. This must be a coincidence. People have doppelgangers, right? It doesn't mean." "The resemblance is remarkable," Vittorio interrupted, his eyes moving between the phone and Maya's face. "Even the way you stand. The way you held him when he ran to you." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "You see now why he called you that." Marco tugged on Maya's hand. She looked down at him. This small boy with his father's dark eyes and his mother's delicate features, and her heart twisted. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," she said gently, kneeling to his level. "I'm not your mommy. My name is Maya and—" "But you look like her," Marco said, his voice small and fragile. It was the first time she'd heard him speak normally, without the desperate crying. You look exactly like her. Sometimes people look alike, Maya explained, struggling to find the right words. But that doesn't make them the same person. Your mommy is someone very special, and I'm just... Stay, Marco's grip tightened. Please stay. Maya looked up at Vittorio helplessly. The man's carefully controlled expression had begun to fracture. He stared at his son with something close to anguish. Marco hasn't spoken since the funeral, Vittorio said, moving closer. The doctors said it was trauma. Selective mutism brought on by grief. We've tried everything, therapists, specialists, medications. He paused. Nothing worked. He just stopped. Until tonight, Maya whispered. Until you, Vittorio crouched beside them, his hand hovering near his son's shoulder, but not quite touching. I know this is beyond inappropriate. I know you came here to work, not to be caught in the middle of something like this. But would you consider staying? Just until he calms down. Just until. I can stay a little while, Maya heard herself say. She couldn't explain why. Maybe it was the desperate hope in Marco's eyes. Maybe it was the controlled grief in Vittorio's voice. Maybe it was because she understood what it meant to be a parent who'd do anything for their child. Relief flickered across Vittorio's face. Thank you. They sat on the floor together. An odd tableau of a mafia boss in a tuxedo, a waitress in a borrowed uniform, and a traumatized child. Marco settled between them, his hand still clutching Maya's. Are you hungry, sweetheart? Maya asked softly. Marco shook his head. Tired. A small nod. Without thinking, Maya began to hum. It was the same lullaby she sang to Emma every night, a simple melody her own mother had sung to her. The tune filled the quiet room, gentle and soothing. Marco's eyes began to droop. Maya continued humming, swaying slightly, the motion instinctive. Marco's breathing evened out, his small body relaxing against her side. And then, barely audible, he smiled. It was tiny, just the slightest upturn of his lips, but Maya saw it. More importantly, so did Vittorio. The man's composure shattered. His hand came up to cover his mouth, his eyes glistening in the soft light. He turned away slightly, shoulders rigid with the effort of maintaining control, but Maya saw the tremor run through him. That's the first time, Vittorio said, his voice rough. Since the funeral. He hasn't smiled once in 13 months. Maya kept humming, kept swaying, even as her own eyes burned with unshed tears.
She didn't know these people.
She'd walked into this gala thinking about rent money and grocery bills, and now she sat on the floor holding a grieving child while his father fought to keep from breaking down. The song, Vittorio managed after a moment. What is it? Just something my mother used to sing, Maya said softly. I sing it to my daughter every night. You have a daughter?
Emma.
She's 7-inch. Maya looked down at Marco, now fully asleep against her. She's home with a neighbor right now, probably dreaming about her birthday next month. Vittorio studied her for a long moment. You're a good mother. I try to be. It's not always easy doing it alone. Understanding passed between them, two parents in different worlds, bound by the fierce love they held for their children. Outside the door, the gala continued without them. The whispers would spread through Boston like wildfire. By morning, everyone would know about the widow DeLuca and the mysterious woman who looked like a ghost. But in this quiet room, none of that mattered yet. Thank you, Vittorio said again, for staying. Maya nodded, still humming softly, and wondered what tomorrow would bring. Maya didn't sleep well that night. She'd left the gala at midnight, taking a rideshare home because the catering company's van had left hours earlier. The driver had stared at her in the rearview mirror, and she'd realized with sinking dread that someone must have already posted photos online. By morning, her phone was dead from the constant buzzing of notifications. She plugged it in and made coffee while Emma got ready for school, trying to maintain the appearance of normalcy. But when she finally checked her messages, her hands started shaking. 67 missed calls. Hundreds of text messages. Her social media accounts flooded with friend requests and comments from strangers. Mom, Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway, backpack slung over one shoulder. Why are there people outside? Maya's coffee mug slipped, shattering against the linoleum floor. She rushed to the window. 3 news vans sat parked on the street below their apartment building, cameras pointed at the entrance. A crowd of reporters milled around the sidewalk. "Oh no," Maya whispered.
No, no, no.
Her phone rang again. An unknown number. She ignored it. It rang again immediately, a different, unknown number. "Mom, you're scaring me," Emma said. Maya forced herself to breathe. "It's okay, baby. Everything's fine. We just need to." A knock at the door made them both jump. "Miss Torres." A man's voice, professional and calm. "My name is Vincent. I work for Mr. DeLuca. He sent me to help." Maya approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole. A man in a dark suit stood in the hallway, his hands visible and empty. He looked more like a businessman than the security guards from last night. "I'm not opening this door," Maya called out. Understandable. Mr. DeLuca anticipated the media attention would be problematic. He sent a car to take you and your daughter somewhere safe until this dies down. He also asked me to give you this. A white envelope slid under the door. Maya picked it up with trembling fingers. Inside was a handwritten note on expensive stationery. "Miss Torres, I apologize for the chaos my family has brought into your life. Please accept the car and temporary accommodation with my compliments. You owe me nothing, but I would like to speak with you when you're ready."
There was also a check.
Maya stared at the number, convinced she was reading it wrong. $5,000. "Mom," Emma tugged at her sleeve. "What's happening?" Maya looked at her daughter's worried face, then at the envelope, then toward the window where reporters waited like vultures. She thought about the $43 in her account and the rent she couldn't pay. She opened the door. Vincent was exactly as professional as his voice suggested, mid-40s, gray at the temples, with kind eyes that had seen too much. "Mrs. Chun is already downstairs in the car with your daughter's school bag. Mr. DeLuca thought you might want to get Emma to school without the media circus." "How did he?" "Mr. DeLuca is very thorough, ma'am." 20 minutes later, Maya sat in the back of a black Mercedes. Emma safely dropped at school through a side entrance, watching Boston slide past the tinted windows. Vincent drove in silence, giving her space to process. They didn't go to a hotel. They went to the DeLuca mansion. The house, if you could call it that, sat on 3 acres in an exclusive neighborhood Maya had only seen in magazines. Stone walls, iron gates, perfectly manicured gardens. It looked like old money and power, the kind that didn't advertise itself. Vincent led her through marble hallways to a sitting room where Vittorio waited, still wearing last night's dress shirt, but with the sleeves rolled up and the collar open. He looked exhausted. "Miss Torres, thank you for coming." "I didn't have much choice," Maya said, more sharply than intended. "There are reporters camped outside my apartment." "I know." "I'm sorry," Vittorio gestured to a chair. "Please sit. Can I offer you coffee? Breakfast? I want to know what's happening. Why did you send that check?" "Because this is my fault. The media attention, the invasion of your privacy, all of it stems from what happened at the gala." He paced to the window, hands in his pockets. "I should have handled it better. I should have made a statement, explained the situation. Instead, I let you walk out into that chaos." "A statement saying what?" "That your son mistook me for his dead mother, because we look alike." Maya shook her head. "That's not exactly going to calm things down." "No," Vittorio admitted. "It's not." A soft sound made them both turn. Marco stood in the doorway, still in his pajamas, clutching a stuffed elephant. His eyes went wide when he saw Maya. "You came back," he whispered. Maya's resolve wavered. The boy looked so small, so hopeful. Vittorio moved to his son. "Marco, what do we talk about?" "Miss Torres is a guest, not." "Is she staying?" The question hung in the air. Vittorio looked at Maya, something desperate flickering in his controlled expression. "Marco hasn't eaten since last night," he said quietly. He won't touch his food. Won't speak to the staff. He just keeps asking for, he trailed off.
For me, Maya finished.
I know I have no right to ask. But I'm asking anyway, Vittorio's voice dropped.
Stay.
Just for a few days, until the media frenzy dies down. Let Marco adjust to the situation. I'll pay whatever you need, your rent, your bills, your time. Name your price. I'm not for sale, Maya said coldly. That's not what I meant. Please, the words seemed foreign in his mouth. I'm not asking as someone who's used to getting what he wants. I'm asking as a father who hasn't seen his son eat in 24 hours. Maya looked at Marco, standing there with his elephant, hope written across his face. She thought of Emma, safe at school but coming home to an apartment under siege. She thought of the bills she couldn't pay and the future she couldn't provide. She thought of the gentle weight of a grieving child falling asleep against her side. Temporary, she said finally, just until things calmed down. The relief on Vittorio's face was unmistakable. Thank you. Marco ran to her, wrapping his arms around her waist. And Maya wondered what she'd just agreed to. Maya lasted 3 days in the DeLuca mansion before the world exploded. The first 2 days were strange, but manageable. She stayed in a guest room larger than her entire apartment, ate meals prepared by a private chef, and spent hours with Marco. The boy followed her everywhere, content just to be near her. She read him stories, played simple games, and watched as he slowly came back to life. Vittorio kept his distance, observing from doorways, always professional. But Maya caught him watching sometimes, not her, but his son. The way Marco laughed. The way he ate without being coaxed. The way he'd started talking in full sentences again. On the third morning, Vincent knocked on her door at 6 a.m. Ms. Torres, you need to see this. The tablet he handed her showed the morning's headlines. Maya's stomach turned to ice. Widowed mob boss replaces dead wife with identical stranger. DeLuca's new woman. Gold digger or true love. Mafia king's look-alike lover moves into family mansion. The photos were everywhere. Someone had caught her entering the mansion. Someone else had photographed her through the windows, playing with Marco in the garden. The captions were vicious, speculating about affairs, manipulation, conspiracy. They'd found her Facebook, her Instagram. Emma's school photo was circulating online with the caption, "The daughter she brought into DeLuca's world." Oh God, Maya whispered. Emma. Mr. DeLuca has already arranged additional security at her school, Vincent said. But Ms. Torres, it's worse than the headlines. He showed her the next screen. Her apartment building, surrounded by a mob of reporters 3 times larger than before. Someone had spray-painted "Home Wrecker" across her door. Her landlord had left 4 increasingly angry voicemails about the disturbance. Maya's hand shook. I need to leave. I need to get Emma and leave Boston. Change our names. Something. That won't be necessary. Vittorio stood in the doorway, fully dressed despite the early hour. He looked like he hadn't slept. Vincent, give us a moment. When they were alone, Vittorio crossed to where Maya sat, maintaining a careful distance. I've already spoken with my lawyers. We're preparing a statement to clarify the situation. A statement. Maya laughed bitterly. What are you going to say? The truth? That your traumatized son latched onto a stranger who looks like his mother? That'll sound so much better. The truth is better than letting them create their own narrative. The truth is that I made a mistake coming here. Maya stood, pacing. I thought I was helping. I thought, God, I was so stupid. My daughter's face is online, Vittorio. Strangers are calling her names. My apartment's been vandalized. My life is under my protection now. The words were quiet but absolute. Maya stopped pacing. What? Vittorio met her eyes with an intensity that made her breath catch. You came into this situation because of me. Because my son needed you, and I was desperate enough to ask. The consequences are my responsibility. He moved closer. I won't let them hurt you or your daughter. Either of you. You can't just. I can, and I will. His voice carried the weight of authority. of a man accustomed to making declarations that became reality. Your apartment lease is being bought out. Your belongings will be moved to a secure location of your choosing, another apartment, a house, whatever you want. Emma's school has been notified that any unauthorized person attempting to approach her will be arrested. And as of this morning, you're officially employed by the Lucia DeLuca Foundation as a special programs coordinator. Maya stared at him. You can't just rearrange my entire life. I'm trying to protect it by controlling it. The accusation hung between them. Vittorio's jaw tightened, but when he spoke again, his voice was softer. You're right. I'm sorry. I'm used to solving problems with money and influence. But this isn't just a problem to solve. This is your life, and you deserve a say in it. He pulled out his phone, typed something, then showed her the screen. It was a press release, scheduled but not yet sent. DeLuca family statement. Ms. Maya Torres is a private caregiver hired to help Marco DeLuca through his ongoing grief therapy. Any resemblance to the late Lucia DeLuca is coincidental. The family requests privacy during this difficult time. Any harassment of Ms. Torres or her family will be met with legal action. Will it work? Maya asked quietly. It's a start. But the media feeds on scandal, and we've given them a feast. Vittorio pocketed his phone. The real question is what you want to do. Stay and let me help protect you. Or leave and I'll ensure you have the resources to start fresh somewhere else. Either way, you won't face this alone. Before Maya could answer, rapid footsteps echoed in the hallway. A different security guard appeared, his face grim. Sir, we have a situation. The front gate. An alarm blared through the house, sharp and insistent. Vittorio's entire demeanor shifted, his body tensing like a coiled spring. Get Marco to the safe room, he ordered.
Now.
What's happening? Maya demanded. Vittorio was already moving toward the door, speaking rapidly into his phone. Lock down the property. I want every camera feed on my screen in 30 seconds. And get me Rossi on the line. Vittorio, what's going on? He paused in the doorway, and for just a moment, she saw something flicker behind his controlled expression. Not fear, something colder. Welcome to my world, Miss Torres, he said quietly. Someone just tried to ram through my front gate. The alarm continued to wail as Maya heard shouting from somewhere in the house. Marco's voice, crying for her. And outside, beyond the stone walls and iron gates, cameras captured everything while Boston held its breath and waited for the next headline. The scandal had just become dangerous. The safe room was nothing like Maya had imagined. Instead of a cramped bunker, it was a comfortable space with soft lighting, toys, and even a small kitchen. But the reinforced steel door and the security monitors covering one wall told the real story. Marco clung to her on the leather sofa, his face buried in her shoulder. The brief peace he'd found over the past 3 days had shattered the moment the alarms went off. It's okay, Maya murmured, stroking his hair. We're safe here. But she didn't feel safe. She felt trapped. On the monitors, she could see security personnel moving through the mansion grounds. The front gate showed damage, twisted metal where a black SUV had rammed it before being stopped by the reinforced barrier. The vehicle sat abandoned now, driver's door hanging open. Vittorio stood in his office on another screen, phone pressed to his ear, his expression carved from stone. Vincent entered the safe room with 2 bottles of water and a tablet. The property is secure. It was just a scare tactic. The vehicle was empty, remotely driven. No actual threat to anyone inside. A scare tactic? Maya's voice rose. Someone just crashed a car into the gate. Welcome to the game's powerful men play, Vincent said grimly. This is about sending a message to Mr. DeLuca. What message? What's happening? Vincent hesitated, then handed her the tablet. You should see this. The screen showed a news article from an hour ago. DeLuca Doc's deal in jeopardy. Rival boss Rossi claims territorial rights. Maya skimmed the article, her confusion growing. It talked about shipping contracts, waterfront property, and a decades-old territorial agreement between Boston's business families. Code, she realized, for organized crime. I don't understand. What does this have to do with me and Marco? Everything and nothing, Vincent said. You and Marco are the excuse, not the reason. Rossi sees Mr. DeLuca as distracted, emotional, vulnerable. The headlines about you, the scandal, it all makes him look weak in a world where perception is power. Maya looked at Marco, who'd finally quieted against her. So this is my fault.
No, ma'am.
This would have happened eventually. Rossi's been waiting for an opening for years. The safe room door opened, and Vittorio entered. He'd changed into dark jeans and a black shirt, looking less like a philanthropist and more like what he actually was, a man who'd built an empire in the shadows. Marco, he said gently, Vincent is going to take you to the playroom. Maya will be right here when you're done.
No.
Marco's grip tightened. Don't leave me. I'm not leaving, Maya assured him. I promise. I just need to talk to your dad for a few minutes. It took another 5 minutes of coaxing before Marco reluctantly went with Vincent. When the door closed, Vittorio's careful composure cracked. I need to tell you something, he said. And you're not going to like it. Maya stood, crossing her arms. Tell me. The man behind this, his name is Carlo Rossi. He runs the competing operations in South Boston. We've had an uneasy peace for the past 5 years, since he paused. Since Lucia died. What does he want? Control of the waterfront shipping docks. They're worth tens of millions annually, and they're the backbone of both our operations. Vittorio moved to the monitors, his hands in his pockets. He called me 30 minutes ago. The way he said it made Maya's skin crawl. What did he say? Vittorio's jaw clenched. He said I've lost my grip. That I'm too distracted playing house with my dead wife's replacement to protect what's mine. His voice went flat. He offered me a deal. Hand over the docks quietly, or he'll take them by force. Along with my son. The room went cold. He threatened Marco? Maya whispered. Not directly. But the implication was clear. Vittorio turned to face her, and Maya saw something dangerous burning behind his eyes. He said, and I quote, That boy needs a mother, DeLuca. Shame if something happened before he got 1 foot. Maya's hand went to her mouth. Oh God. I'm telling you this because you deserve to know what you've walked into. This isn't just media scandal anymore. This is real danger. Vittorio approached her slowly, like he was afraid she'd bolt. I can have you and Emma on a plane tonight. New identities, new city, everything arranged. You'll be safe, and Rossi will have no reason to pursue you. What about Marco? I'll handle it.
How?
Maya demanded. By giving this man what he wants. By fighting him. Vittorio's silence was answer enough. No, Maya said firmly. Don't start another war. Not over docks or money or pride. Your son just got his voice back. He just started eating again. He needs his father alive, not. He touched my family. Vittorio's voice dropped to something barely above a whisper, but the fury in it was unmistakable. He threatened my son. There are lines, Miss Torres. Lines that, once crossed, require a response. A response or revenge. In my world, they're the same thing. Maya stared at him, seeing clearly for the first time the duality of the man before her. The careful philanthropist who'd built a foundation in his wife's memory. The devoted father who'd broken down at his son's first smile in a year. And underneath it all, something harder. Something that had survived in a world where weakness meant death. This time, Vittorio said quietly, it ends. The certainty in his voice terrified her. Somewhere in the mansion, Marco was playing, temporarily shielded from the storm gathering around them. And somewhere in South Boston, Carlo Rossi was probably smiling, confident he'd already won. Neither of them knew that Maya Torres was about to change everything. Maya couldn't sleep that night. Emma had been brought to the mansion under heavy security, confused and scared by the sudden upheaval. Maya spent 2 hours settling her daughter, explaining in the simplest terms possible that they were staying with a friend for a few days until things calmed down. Emma had looked around the enormous guest room and whispered, Are we rich now?
No, baby.
We're just safe. But Maya wasn't sure even that was true. At 2 in the morning, She gave up on sleep and wandered the mansion's hallways. The house was quiet but not empty. She could sense the security presence, the guards stationed at key points. Protection or prison? She wasn't sure anymore. She found herself outside Vittorio's office. Light spilled from under the door. Maya knocked softly.
Come in.
Vittorio sat behind his desk, still fully dressed, surrounded by papers and files. His laptop screen glowed in the dim room, showing what looked like financial documents. He looked up when she entered, surprise flickering across his tired features. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Can you?" Maya closed the door behind her. "It's to him. Sleep is a luxury I can't afford right now," he gestured to the papers. "I'm looking for leverage. Something I can use against Rossi that doesn't involve violence." Maya moved closer, curiosity overcoming caution. "I thought you said it had to end." "It does. But you were right. Marco needs his father alive." Vittorio rubbed his eyes. "So, I'm looking for another way. Legal action, financial pressure, something that doesn't put my son at risk of becoming an orphan." On impulse, Maya circled the desk to see what he was reviewing. Shipping manifests, corporate documents, tax records. Nothing that made sense to her untrained eye. "May I?" she asked, gesturing to the papers. Vittorio looked surprised but nodded. Maya started sorting through the documents, her mind clicking into gear. Before Emma was born, before everything fell apart, she'd been studying accounting. She'd never finished her degree, but she remembered enough to recognize patterns in numbers. "What are these?" She held up a stack of ledgers. "Rossi's operations, as far as my people have been able to document. Legal businesses he uses to launder money. But there's nothing actionable." He's careful. Maya flipped through the pages, frowning. Something nagged at her, a discrepancy in the dates and amounts. These shipping records from 3 years ago. The imports don't match the customs declarations. That's expected. He's smuggling. But proving it is. No. Look, Maya spread the papers across the desk. These dates. 3 years ago. That's around when Lucia died. Vittorio finished quietly. Maya's hand stilled. "How did she die?" "You said it was an accident." Vittorio's face went carefully blank.
Car accident.
She was driving home from a foundation meeting. Her brakes failed on a mountain road. Brakes just fail. The investigators ruled it mechanical failure. "Old car, deferred maintenance." His voice was hollow. "I blamed myself for not insisting she get a new one. She loved that old Mercedes. Said it reminded her of her father." Maya looked back at the ledgers, her heart pounding. "Vittorio, these transactions, they're coded, but if I'm reading this right, someone was embezzling from your shipping operations. Large amounts. And the timing," she pulled up another sheet. "The dates cluster around when these brakes would have been serviced." Vittorio went very still. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that maybe you should look at who serviced her car. And who had access to your financial records 3 years ago." Maya's hands trembled as she pointed to the coded entries. "These withdrawals, they're hidden in the shipping costs. Someone was bleeding your operations and needed it to look like poor management. Like you were distracted and losing control." "After Lucia died, I was distracted," Vittorio said slowly. "I let others handle the day-to-day operations for months. The business suffered. I lost contracts, including the waterfront docks." Maya guessed. Vittorio's eyes met hers, and she saw the realization dawning. "I had to sell partial control to stay solvent. Rossi bought in at a fraction of the value. I thought I was just a grieving widower who'd made bad business decisions. What if it wasn't grief? What if it was sabotage?" Maya pulled out her phone, taking photos of the ledgers. "These coded transactions, if we can trace them back to Rossi, prove he was embezzling and sabotaging your business. Then Lucia's death wasn't an accident." Vittorio's voice was barely audible. "It was murder. Staged to look like mechanical failure while he systematically destroyed my finances." The office fell silent except for the ticking of an antique clock on the shelf. "I need to make some calls," Vittorio said finally. He looked at Maya with something close to awe. "How did you see this?" My accountants have been through these records a dozen times. Sometimes you need fresh eyes. And Maya, hesitated. I know what it's like to be underestimated. People look at me and see a struggling single mom, a waitress, someone who doesn't matter. They don't see someone who almost had an accounting degree. Someone who notices details. Vittorio stood, moving around the desk. For a moment, Maya thought he might hug her. Instead, he stopped a respectful distance away.
Thank you, he said simply.
You may have just given me the weapon I need. What are you going to do? His expression hardened. If you're going to fight him, do it knowing why. Maya held his gaze. And then he pays for both of us, Vittorio said quietly. For Lucia. For Marco. For every life he's destroyed. The dangerous certainty was back in his voice, but this time, Maya didn't try to stop him. Some debts, she realized, could only be paid in full. Vittorio spent the next 48 hours making calls, gathering evidence, and building his case. Maya watched him transform from the grieving widower into something else, a man with purpose, with clarity, with a cold determination that both frightened and fascinated her. On the second evening, he found her in the garden where she sat with Marco and Emma. The two children had bonded quickly, Emma taking on a protective older sister role that made Maya's heart ache. I need to speak with you, Vittorio said quietly. They walked to the far edge of the property, out of earshot from the children and security. I'm meeting with Rossi tomorrow night, Vittorio said. Neutral location. His private club in South Boston. Maya's stomach dropped. Is that safe?
No.
But it's necessary, he handed her a folder. These are the documents you helped me find, along with additional evidence my team uncovered. Bank transfers linking Rossi to the embezzlement. Testimony from a mechanic who was paid to tamper with Lucia's brakes. He kept records as insurance. Phone logs showing Rossi coordinating everything. Maya's hands shook as she flipped through the pages. This proves he killed her.
Yes.
But I can't go to the police. Half of them are on someone's payroll, and a public trial would expose too much about both our operations. This has to be handled privately. What does that mean? Vittorio's jaw tightened. It means I'm going to give him a choice. Disappear and leave Marco alone, or I release everything to the FBI, the media, and every rival who'd love to see him destroyed. Either way, he's finished in Boston. And if he doesn't choose either option, the silence that followed was answer enough. I've arranged for additional security here, Vittorio continued. Vincent will stay with you, Marco, and Emma. If something goes wrong tomorrow night. Don't, Maya interrupted. Don't talk like that. I have to be realistic. If Rossi feels cornered, he might. Then don't corner him alone. Take security. Take backup. Don't walk into that club like you have nothing to lose. Vittorio's expression softened. But I don't have nothing to lose anymore. I have Marco. I have a reason to come home. The weight of his words hung between them. In the distance, they could hear the children laughing. Promise me you'll be careful, Maya said finally. I promise to do what's necessary. It wasn't the reassurance she wanted, but she knew it was all he could give. The next night, Vittorio drove himself to Rossi's club. No security detail. No weapons. Just the folder of evidence on the passenger seat and a recording device hidden in his watch. The club was exclusive, expensive, and empty except for Rossi and two of his men. They sat at a private table in the back, whiskey already poured. DeLuca, Rossi greeted with a sharp smile. He was older than Vittorio, silver-haired and sharp-eyed. I'm surprised you came. Thought you'd be too busy playing house with your charity case. Vittorio sat across from him, without responding. He placed the folder on the table between them. What's this? Rossi's smile didn't waver. Justice. Rossi flipped open the folder. His smile faded as he scanned the first page. Then the second. By the third page, his face had gone pale. Where did you get this? Does it matter? Vittorio leaned back, perfectly calm. Bank transfers in your name. Testimony from your mechanic. Phone records. Everything the FBI would need to put you away for murder, racketeering, and embezzlement. You can't prove. I already have. The question is what happens next. Rossi's men shifted, hands moving toward their jackets. Rossi held up a hand, stopping them. You wouldn't risk the publicity, Rossi said, but his voice lacked conviction. A trial would expose both our operations. You'd go down too. Maybe. But you killed my wife. You made my son watch his mother's casket lowered into the ground. You stole his childhood. Vittorio's voice remained eerily calm. So, yes, I'd risk everything to see you pay for that. What do you want? I want you gone. Out of Boston. Out of the business. Sell your operations, scatter your people, and disappear. You have 1 week. Rossi laughed, but it sounded forced. And if I don't? Then this folder goes to the FBI, the Boston Globe, and every rival you've ever made. You'll be arrested, your assets frozen, your family exposed. You won't make it to trial. Someone you've wronged will get to you first, Vittorio stood. You thought you could take everything from me. But I don't need headlines or power plays. I just needed the truth. He turned to leave. You won't kill me? Rossi called out, genuine surprise in his voice. After everything? Vittorio paused at the door. I'm not the man I used to be. My son needs a father, not a murderer. He looked back. But make no mistake, if you come near my family again, mercy won't be an option. Outside the club, Vittorio sat in his car for a long moment, hands gripping the steering wheel. His phone buzzed. A text from Vincent. All quiet here.
Kids asleep. Maya asking about you.
Vittorio started the engine and drove home through rain-slicked streets, the folder left behind on Rossi's table like a death sentence. He didn't know that Rossi's men had already drawn their weapons. He didn't hear the gunshot that rang out in the club 30 seconds after he left. But by morning, all of Boston would know that Carlo Rossi was dead, and the debate over who killed him, DeLuca or one of Rossi's many enemies, would rage for weeks. The war was over. But at what cost? The mansion was quiet when Vittorio's car pulled through the gates at 11 p.m. Rain hammered against the windshield, turning the driveway into a blur of water and reflected light. He sat for a moment in the garage, engine off, listening to the storm. His phone had been ringing for the past hour. News traveled fast in his world. Rossi was dead, shot by one of his own men in what witnesses were calling an internal power struggle. The timing, so soon after Vittorio's visit, would raise questions. But there was no evidence, no weapon, nothing to tie him to the scene. He'd walked away clean. So, why did he feel so heavy? Vincent met him at the side entrance, relief clear on his face.
Sir.
We heard the news. Are you all right?
I've fine.
The family? Safe. Miss Torres put both children to bed hours ago, but she's still awake. She's been waiting in the sitting room. Vittorio nodded, water dripping from his coat. He should change, should compose himself. Instead, he found himself walking toward the sitting room, drawn by something he couldn't name. Maya sat curled in an armchair by the window, a book forgotten in her lap. She looked up when he entered, her eyes widening. You're soaked, she said, standing quickly. It's raining. I can see that. She grabbed a throw blanket from the sofa, wrapping it around his shoulders with surprising firmness. Sit down before you catch pneumonia. Vittorio obeyed, too tired to argue. Maya disappeared and returned with a towel, which she pressed into his hands. I heard, she said quietly. It's all over the news. They're saying Rossi was killed by his own people. That's what they're saying. Is it true? Vittorio dried his face slowly. I don't know. I left him alive. What happened after? He shrugged. Sometimes men like Rossi make too many enemies. Someone always settles the score eventually. Maya studied him carefully. You didn't kill him.
No.
But you're not sorry he's dead. Vittorio looked up at her, this woman who'd stumbled into his world by accident and somehow seen through every wall he'd built.
No.
I'm not sorry. Does that make me a monster? It makes you human. Maya sat beside him, keeping a respectful distance, but close enough that he could feel her warmth. He killed your wife, threatened your son. You had every right to want him gone. Wanting and doing are different things. I know. That's why you're sitting here wet and exhausted instead of celebrating, she paused. Where did you go after the club? Vittorio leaned back, closing his eyes. I drove. Just drove through the city thinking. I ended up at the cemetery where Lucia is buried. Maya's hand found his, a gentle pressure. What did you tell her? That I found the truth. That the man who killed her was gone. That Marco was safe, his voice roughened. That I was sorry it took me so long. They sat in silence for a moment, rain pattering against the windows. I need to tell you something, Vittorio said finally. When I was sitting in that club, looking at Rossi with all the evidence laid out, I had a choice. I could have killed him. My security was positioned outside. One call, and he'd have been gone. Clean, quick, no witnesses. But you didn't call.
No.
Because I kept thinking about Marco upstairs, asking when I'd be home. About you. Waiting to make sure I came back safe, he opened his eyes, meeting her gaze. I realized something. For years, I operated on the principle that power came from fear, from being willing to do what others wouldn't. But Marco didn't heal because I was powerful. He healed because you were gentle. Maya's eyes glistened.
Vittorio.
I didn't kill him out of anger tonight, he continued. I gave him a choice because I finally understood what love protects. It's not about revenge. It's about making sure the people you care about can sleep peacefully. Marco can sleep peacefully now. So can I. Even though he's still dead. Even though Vittorio squeezed her hand. Rossi destroyed himself. He built an empire on betrayal, and eventually, his own people turned on him. I just gave them the truth they needed to make that decision. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Maya shifted closer, her shoulder touching his. You came back, she said softly. That's what matters. You promised Marco you'd come home, and you did. I promised you too. I know. They sat together as the storm gradually eased, the rain softening to a gentle patter. Vittorio felt the tension slowly drain from his body, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion that was almost peaceful. I should check on Marco, he said eventually, but he didn't move. I looked in on him an hour ago. He's sleeping soundly. Emma too. They wore themselves out playing in the game room. Maya smiled. They've started calling themselves brother and sister. Something warm unfurled in Vittorio's chest. How do you feel about that? Terrified, Maya admitted. But also, hopeful? Is that crazy?
No.
It's human. Upstairs, Marco slept peacefully for the first time in over a year, unaware of the violence that had swirled around him. Unaware that the man who'd threatened him was gone. He only knew that his father had come home, just like he'd promised. And in the morning, Boston would wake to news of Rossi's death and speculate endlessly about what it meant. But in the DeLuca mansion, a broken family was slowly learning to heal. The morning sun broke through the clouds like a promise. Maya woke to find Emma already dressed and playing quietly with Marco in the hallway, their laughter a gentle sound that seemed impossible after the darkness of the previous night. Downstairs, the kitchen smelled of fresh coffee and pancakes. Vittorio stood at the stove, still in his dress shirt from last night, sleeves rolled up, focused intently on flipping a pancake. You cook? Maya asked from the doorway. He glanced over, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. Lucia taught me. She said a man who runs an empire should be able to feed his own son. He flipped the pancakes successfully. I'm rusty, but Marco loves them. Maya poured herself coffee, studying him in the morning light. He looked tired but calmer, like something heavy had been lifted from his shoulders. Have you seen the news? She asked. Vincent gave me the highlights. Vittorio slid pancakes onto a plate. Rossi's death is being ruled as an internal dispute. His second-in-command is claiming leadership, distancing himself from Rossi's questionable business practices. Several of Rossi's associates are cooperating with federal investigators. And you? My name hasn't been mentioned. The evidence I gathered is being anonymously provided to the FBI. He set the plate down, meeting her eyes. It's over, Maya. Truly over. The newspaper on the counter told the story in bold print. Rival crime lord Carlo Rossi found dead. Evidence points to massive corruption ring. FBI launches investigation into Rossi operations. De Luca family not under suspicion, sources say. Maya scanned the articles, her pulse gradually slowing. They're really leaving you alone? I made arrangements years ago. Legal businesses, legitimate income, distance from the old operations. Vittorio poured his own coffee. Lucia wanted me to go straight, to build something real for Marco. After she died, I slipped back into old patterns. But this forced me to commit. The Lucia De Luca Foundation isn't just a front anymore. It's my life's work now. And the docks? The shipping operations? Being restructured. I'm selling off the questionable elements, keeping only what's completely legitimate, he smiled wryly. It'll cost me millions, but Marco will inherit a clean legacy. That's worth more than any empire built on fear. Footsteps thundered down the stairs. Marco and Emma burst into the kitchen, faces flushed with excitement. Daddy, can Emma stay forever? Marco asked, climbing onto a chair. Please? She's my best friend. Emma looked at Maya hopefully. Can we, Mom? This house is so cool, and Marco has every toy ever, and there's a movie theater in the basement. Maya's heart clenched. She caught Vittorio's eye across the kitchen, saw the question there. We'll talk about it, Maya said carefully. But first, pancakes. Who's hungry? The children cheered, and the moment passed into the comfortable chaos of breakfast. But Maya felt the weight of the unspoken conversation hovering between her and Vittorio. Later that afternoon, while the children played in the garden under Vincent's watchful eye, Vittorio found Maya in the library. She'd been reviewing the Foundation's financial reports, her accounting instincts unable to resist the neat rows of numbers. These are impressive, she said, gesturing to the documents. The Foundation's reach is incredible. Education programs, healthcare clinics, housing assistance. Lucia's vision, Vittorio said, settling into the chair across from her. She grew up poor, worked her way through college. She never forgot where she came from. Like me, Maya said softly. Like you, Vittorio leaned forward, hands clasped. Maya, I need to ask you something, and I need you to know there's no pressure. You can say no, and I'll respect that completely. Maya's pulse quickened. Okay.
Stay.
Not as a temporary caregiver or a look-alike replacement. Stay as yourself, Maya Torres, the woman who saw through my ledgers, who helped my son heal, who reminds me what kindness looks like. He paused. I'm offering you a position as the Foundation's Director of Operations. Real salary, real authority, real work. You'd help me reshape the Foundation, expand its programs, make a genuine difference. Maya stared at him. Vittorio, I never finished college. I'm a waitress with half an accounting degree and you're brilliant. You found connections my trained accountants missed. You understand struggle in a way no Ivy League MBA ever could. You know what people actually need because you've needed it yourself. His intensity made her breath catch. This isn't charity. This is recognition of what you can do. What about Emma? Her school, her friends. There's an excellent private school 10 minutes from here. Full scholarship through the Foundation if you'll accept it. Emma can start fresh, make new friends, have the opportunities you've always wanted for her. Maya's eyes burned. This is too much. It's what you deserve. Both of you, Vittorio softened. I'm not asking you to replace Lucia. I'm not asking you to be Marco's mother, though he clearly adores you. I'm asking you to be part of something bigger than both of us. To help me build the legacy she dreamed of. Through the window, they could see Marco and Emma building a fort from garden furniture, their laughter carrying on the breeze. What if it doesn't work? Maya whispered. What if the media comes back, or Marco realizes I'm not his mother, or... Then we figure out together. But Maya, Vittorio held her gaze. I think you've been running and surviving for so long that you've forgotten how to live. Let me help you remember. Maya looked at the financial reports, at the window showing two children playing, at the man offering her a chance she'd never dared dream of. She thought of her tiny apartment with its broken heating and overdue rent. She thought of Emma's unsigned field trip form and the $43 that had haunted her. She thought of Marco's smile and the weight of purpose. "Okay," she heard herself say.
Yes.
"We'll stay." Vittorio's relief was palpable. "Thank you." And in that moment, everything shifted. Not a fairy tale ending, but a new beginning built on truth, healing, and the fragile hope of second chances. 3 weeks passed in a blur of adjustment and discovery. Maya moved into a guest house on the property, separate from the main mansion but close enough that Marco could visit whenever he wanted. Emma enrolled in her new school and came home each day bubbling with stories about art classes and new friends. Maya threw herself into foundation work with an intensity that surprised even Vittorio. She reorganized programs, streamlined budgets, and connected with recipients in ways the previous director never had. She understood their struggles, because she'd lived them. But something remained unspoken between her and Vittorio. A careful distance they both maintained, professional and polite, even as Marco and Emma grew closer and the household settled into comfortable rhythms. Until one evening, when Vittorio found Maya sitting alone on the terrace, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and rose. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. Maya gestured to the empty chair beside her. "It's your terrace." "Our terrace now," he sat, 2 glasses of wine in hand, offering her one. "You've been here almost a month. How are you adjusting?" "It's surreal," Maya admitted. "Sometimes I wake up and forget where I am. Then I remember this isn't temporary and it feels," she struggled for the word, "overwhelming."
Permanent.
Which is more terrifying than overwhelming. Vittorio sipped his wine, studying the horizon. "I need to tell you something. Something I should have said weeks ago." Maya's heart skipped. "Okay. You were never supposed to be in this world," he began quietly. "That night at the gala, when Marco ran to you, I thought it was just the resemblance. A grieving child seeing what he wanted to see. I thought if I could just get him through that moment, we'd all move on with our lives. But we didn't."
No.
"Because something else happened that I didn't expect." Vittorio turned to face her fully. "You changed everything. Not by looking like Lucia, by being yourself. You saw my son as a child who needed comfort, not a weapon to be used or an obligation to be managed. You looked at my business records and saw justice, not opportunity. You walked into my world and somehow made it better." Maya's throat tightened.
Vittorio.
"Let me finish. Please." He set down his wine glass. "For over a year I was drowning, going through motions, managing crises, keeping everything running, because that's what I was supposed to do. I never stopped to ask if I wanted to do it. But you asked the hard questions. Why was I living like this? What did I actually want? What kind of father was I being? I never meant to judge." "You weren't judging. You were caring." His voice roughened. "Do you know what Marco asked me yesterday? He asked if you were going to leave like Mommy did. Not because you look like her, because he's afraid to lose someone he loves again." Tears spilled down Maya's cheeks. "I would never." "I know. That's my point." Vittorio reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he took her hand. "You didn't replace Lucia. You couldn't, and I wouldn't want you to. But you brought something back to us that we'd lost. Hope. The belief that life could be more than just surviving grief." The sunset deepened, casting golden light across them both. "What are you saying?" Maya whispered. "I'm saying that somewhere between the chaos and the danger and the rebuilding, I started looking forward to breakfast because you'd be there. I started coming home earlier because Marco would tell me about your day together. I started believing that maybe I could be more than what I was." "You chose to change," Maya said. "Not me. You gave me a reason to." Vittorio's thumb traced gentle circles on her hand. "I'm not asking for anything, Maya. I'm not expecting you to feel the same way or to take on more than you already have. I just needed you to know that you matter. Not because of who you look like or what you can do for my son. You matter because you're you." Maya stared at their joined hands, her heart thundering.
I'm scared.
Of what? Of this being too good to be true. Of waking up and finding out it was all temporary after all. Of Emma getting attached and then her voice broke. Of me getting attached. Are you attached? The question hung in the amber light. Maya thought of Marco's laughter when she read him bedtime stories. Of Emma's joy at finally having stability and opportunity. Of Vittorio's rare smiles and the way he listened when she spoke, like her words actually mattered. She thought of the woman she'd been 5 weeks ago, exhausted, broke, barely surviving. And the woman she was becoming, purposeful, valued, part of something bigger. Yes, she admitted, terrifyingly attached. Vittorio's expression softened into something that made her breath catch. Not the controlled mask he showed the world, but genuine warmth. Then maybe, he said carefully, we can figure out what that means. Together. No rush, no pressure. Just possibility. Possibility, Maya repeated, testing the word. It felt fragile and precious, like holding something breakable. I know I'm not an easy man, Vittorio continued. I come with history and complications, and a son who needs stability more than romance. But if you're willing to try, I am. The words came out stronger than she expected. I'm willing. The sunset faded to twilight around them, stars beginning to pierce the darkening sky. Somewhere in the house, children laughed. Somewhere in the city, life continued its chaotic dance. But on the terrace, 2 damaged people sat together and chose hope. It wasn't love yet, not quite. But it was the beginning of something that might become love, given time and patience and the courage to believe in second chances. And for now, that was enough. For months later, the crystal ballroom of the Harrington Hotel glittered once again. But this time, Maya Torres walked through the front entrance instead of the service door. Her navy blue dress was simple but elegant, chosen with Vittorio's encouragement and her own cautious taste. Emma walked beside her in a beautiful pink gown, eyes wide with wonder at the chandeliers and the elegantly dressed crowd. Mom, this is where it all started, isn't it? Emma whispered. Yes, baby. This is where everything changed. Vittorio waited near the entrance with Marco, both in matching tuxedos. Marco's face lit up when he saw them, and he immediately ran to take Emma's hand. You look beautiful, he told her solemnly, with the serious politeness of a 7-year-old trying to be grown up. Emma giggled. You look fancy. Vittorio approached Maya, his eyes warm with appreciation. You're stunning. Maya felt heat rise to her cheeks. You don't look so bad yourself. Their relationship had progressed slowly, carefully, over the past 4 months. Quiet dinners after the children were asleep. Walks through the garden discussing foundation business that turned into conversations about dreams and fears. Stolen moments of hand-holding and soft smiles. No grand declarations.
No routine.
Just steady, gentle growth. Tonight marked the official reopening of the Lucia De Luca Foundation's annual gala, rebuilt in her honor, but transformed by Maya's vision into something more accessible and genuine. Half the tickets had been donated to families the foundation served, mixing Boston's elite with the people they were meant to help. Are you ready for this? Vittorio asked, offering his arm. Maya took it, feeling the solid warmth of him beside her. As ready as I'll ever be. They entered the ballroom together, and Maya felt the weight of every eye turning toward them. The whispers started immediately. Not vicious this time, but curious. Speculative. The past 4 months had been kind to them in the press. The initial scandal had faded as the truth emerged. Maya was the foundation's director, a hardworking single mother who'd helped expose Rossi's corruption. The story had shifted from mob boss's mistress to charity director's inspiring journey. But people still watched, still wondered. Vincent approached with a tablet. Sir, we're ready whenever you are. Vittorio nodded, then looked at Maya. Together? What? The opening speech. I'd like you to give it with me. The foundation is as much yours now as it was Lucia's. Maya's heart pounded. Vittorio, I can't. This is her legacy, and I'm not. You're not replacing her. You're continuing what she started. He squeezed her hand.
Please.
Let them see who you really are. Before Maya could protest further, Marco tugged on her dress. Miss Maya, you have to. You're the best at explaining things. Emma nodded enthusiastically. You can do it, Mom. Maya looked at the stage, at the crowd, at the children's encouraging faces. She thought of the woman she'd been 5 months ago, too scared to even dream of standing in front of people like this. Okay, she breathed. Together. The lights dimmed. The crowd settled into their seats. Vittorio led Maya to the stage, their children following behind and settling in the front row. Good evening, Vittorio began, his voice carrying clearly through the room. Thank you all for joining us tonight. 5 months ago, we held a gala in this very ballroom. What happened that night changed my life in ways I never could have imagined. Maya saw heads turn, whispers rippling through the crowd. My son Marco hadn't spoken in over a year, Vittorio continued. Grief had stolen his voice, and I was powerless to help him. Until a woman serving wine that night showed him kindness, without expecting anything in return. He turned to Maya, his expression open and genuine. That woman is now our foundation's director. She's reorganized our programs, expanded our reach, and reminded me what Lucia always believed, that charity isn't about money. It's about seeing people's humanity. Applause started, tentative at first, then growing. Vittorio stepped back, giving Maya space at the microphone. Her hands trembled, but then she saw Marco in the front row, giving her a thumbs up. Emma beaming with pride. Vittorio standing beside her, not taking over, just supporting. I was terrified to come here tonight, Maya began, her voice steadier than she expected. 5 months ago, I walked through the service entrance of this hotel desperate for a paycheck. I had $43 in my checking account and no idea how I'd make rent. The room went silent. This wasn't the polished speech they'd expected. I'm telling you this because I represent the people this foundation serves. I know what it's like to choose between groceries and electricity. To tell your child no because you can't afford yes. To feel invisible in rooms like this. Maya paused, meeting eyes throughout the crowd. But the Lucia De Luca Foundation believes that everyone deserves to be seen. That every child deserves opportunity. That struggling doesn't mean failing. Sometimes it means surviving until you can thrive. The applause grew stronger. So tonight, we celebrate Lucia's vision. But we also celebrate every person in this room who struggled and survived. Every parent working 2 jobs. Every child dreaming of college. Every family 1 paycheck from disaster. Maya's voice strengthened. You're not invisible. You matter. And this foundation will fight for you. The ballroom erupted in applause, genuine, enthusiastic, not the polite clapping of obligation. Marco jumped up from his seat, unable to contain himself. That's my mommy, he shouted, his clear voice carrying through the room. The applause faltered. Shocked silence fell. Marco froze, suddenly aware of what he'd said. He looked at Maya with wide, uncertain eyes. Maya's throat closed with emotion. She knelt at the edge of the stage, eye level with him. Come here, sweetheart. Marco ran to her, and Maya pulled him into a hug. The microphone picked up her next words, carrying them through the ballroom. I'm honored you feel that way, Marco. So honored. This time, when the applause came, it was accompanied by tears and laughter. The audience understood. Not a replacement, but a new chapter. Not erasing the past, but building a future. Emma joined them on stage, hugging both Marco and Maya. Vittorio stood watching his makeshift family, something fierce and protective and grateful shining in his eyes. The gala continued, but everyone would remember this moment. Not as scandal, but as healing made visible. The gala ended near midnight, but the warmth of the evening lingered. Maya stood on the now empty stage, watching the cleanup crew work efficiently around abandoned tables and dimmed lights. Emma and Marco had fallen asleep in a private room an hour ago, exhausted from excitement. Quite a night, Vincent said, passing by with a satisfied nod. The foundation raised 3 times our target amount, and the press coverage has been overwhelmingly positive. Maya smiled, still processing everything. It feels surreal. You earned it, Miss Torres. Every bit. Vincent headed toward the exit, leaving her alone with her thoughts. Almost alone. Are you hiding? Vittorio's voice came from the shadows near the stage entrance. Maya turned, finding him leaning against the doorframe, tie loosened, jacket discarded. He looked relaxed in a way she'd rarely seen, like he'd finally set down something heavy. Maybe a little, she admitted. Processing. He approached slowly, hands in his pockets. Marco calling you mommy in front of 500 people wasn't part of the plan. No, Maya agreed, her chest tightening with remembered emotion. How do you feel about that? Vittorio was quiet for a long moment, joining her at the edge of the stage. The empty ballroom stretched before them, chandeliers casting gentle light on scattered rose petals and forgotten champagne glasses. 5 months ago, if someone had told me Marco would smile again, would speak again, would run around like a normal 7-year-old, I wouldn't have believed them. His voice was soft. If they told me I'd stand on a stage and introduce a waitress as the foundation's director and mean it with my whole heart, I'd have called them insane. And if they told you your son would call that waitress mommy, I'd have said it was impossible. That no one could ever. He stopped, turning to face her fully. But you didn't replace her, Maya. You couldn't, and that's not what happened tonight. Then what did happen? Vittorio reached out, his fingers gentle as they tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. You brought her back to us. Not her ghost, not her shadow. You brought back what she represented: joy, hope, the belief that our family could be whole again. Marco sees that. He's not confused or trying to replace his mother. He's just loving someone new who makes him feel safe. Tears pricked Maya's eyes. I never wanted to take her place. I know. That's why it works. Vittorio's hand cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear. Lucia would have liked you. She'd have loved your fire, your intelligence, the way you see through pretense to truth. She'd have been grateful that you love our son. I do love him, Maya whispered. Both of them. Emma and Marco. They've become inseparable. Like their parents. The question hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility. Maya's breath caught.
Vittorio.
I'm not asking for forever tonight, he interrupted gently. I'm not asking you to marry me or promise me anything you're not ready to give. But I need you to know something. The ballroom felt smaller suddenly, intimate despite its size. I love you, Vittorio said simply. Not because you look like her. Not because you saved my son or fixed my foundation or saw through Rossi's schemes. I love you because you're Maya Torres, stubborn and brilliant and kind. Because you make me want to be better. Because when I think about the future, you're in it. Maya's heart thundered so loudly she was sure he could hear it. I'm terrified. So am I. What if we mess this up? What if the kids get hurt or the press turns on us again, or... Vittorio silenced her with a kiss. It was soft, tentative, asking rather than demanding. Maya froze for half a heartbeat, then melted into it, her hands coming up to grip his shirt as 5 months of careful distance collapsed into this single perfect moment. When they broke apart, both breathless, Vittorio rested his forehead against hers. I can't promise we won't mess up, he murmured. I can't promise the world won't judge us, or that every day will be easy. But I can promise I'll choose you. Every day. In front of everyone. Maya's tears flowed freely now. I love you too. God help me, I do. Then let's be terrified together. They stood there in the empty ballroom, holding each other as the lights gradually dimmed further. The crew worked around them with quiet discretion, respecting the moment. What happens now? Maya asked. Now we go home. We check on our sleeping children. We start planning the foundation's next project. We live. Vittorio pulled back just enough to see her face. We build something real, Maya. Not built on tragedy or scandal or coincidence, but on choice. We choose this. Every day, Maya repeated, the words feeling like a vow. He kissed her hand then, not passionately, but with reverence. A promise made visible. Outside the Crystal Ballroom, Boston continued its restless rhythm. Headlines would circulate tomorrow about the gala, about Vittorio De Luca and Maya Torres, about a mafia boss's transformation and a waitress's rise. Some would be kind, others wouldn't. But inside, in this moment, none of that mattered. Two broken people had found each other in chaos and chosen to heal together. Two children had found the family they needed. A foundation built on grief had transformed into something built on hope. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was something better, something real. As they walked out of the ballroom hand in hand, ready to return to Marco and Emma, ready to face whatever tomorrow brought, Vittorio whispered one last thing. Thank you for running toward my son that night. Thank you for staying. Maya squeezed his hand. Thank you for letting me. The ballroom lights finally went dark behind them. Outside, the city slept in peace. And in a mansion across Boston, two children dreamed of a future where families could be built not just from blood, but from choice, love, and the courage to believe in second chances.
The end.